Yeah, hello, welcome back, guys. In this section, I want to talk a little bit about the component lifecycle. We haven't heard about this concept yet, so I will discuss this in theory. I will show you a very interesting diagram, and let's grab the low-hanging fruit about the component lifecycle. The component lifecycle are methods that are defined on React components. You can use them on every class-based component. You can use them. They are naming like componentWillUnmount, componentDidMount. They have really, mostly speaking, names for themselves. They are well documented. I really encourage you to have a look at them at the site of react.js.org, docs, state and lifecycle HTML to get an overview. It's really good to know about it because in the later development in larger apps, you will not come around a component lifecycle methods. So you need it. For our little project, we will make use of lifecycle method, but there are several, and I want to show them to you and how they are related to the render cycle. So this is provided by Wikitech, this image, but I think it's one of the best one to visualize the lifecycle, the method of component lifecycle. So let's start here. And we are starting here, and I will mark you every lifecycle method, So we are starting here with the call of React DOM render. We get the default props. We are getting the initial state, and here's our first lifecycle method. The name is componentWillUnmount, so it means we can apply any logic. It will return. We can supply any logic here that we want in this method. The syntax, let me show you the syntax very quick. It's quite easy. It's nothing more. It's more or less not a big thing. The lifecycle method would go here now. Usually if you have order in your component, you have something like constructor up here. We don't need constructor yet, but we might need later. Then you have lifecycle methods. Then you provide your own methods, and then you provide the React render method. So I would consider this an okay component. So to follow the scheme, I will put some separations here, because here our own methods. And the React render method is right here. I will remove this unnecessary comment. Here's the React render, and so we can, you can see what is going on in a constructor would look like this. We don't need a constructor, but let's write one. Why not? Constructor would look like this. It's an object, and it needs to be supered. It could have state, it could super his props and so on, but it's not relevant for us now, because we are interested in this lifecycle methods here, and the syntax of this would be like, I will show you, okay? The syntax of this is component, you can see here with my with Visual Studio Code, and it knows JavaScript to React, so it makes suggestions. We have componentDidCatch. This is for errors, this is quite new. componentDidMount, componentDidUpdate, componentWillUnmount. Component will receive props, componentWillUnmount, componentWillUpdate, should component update. So there are several. I want to do now componentWillUnmount. So every time the component is mounted into the render cycle, I want to say console log, and I want to say hello. Let's say hello from mounted from will mount. So And just to give you a try here, then after the will mount, you know, I will write a console log into my render method that we can keep track of the order it fulfills the things. I will write only render here. Let me check if I have any polluting console logs. Yeah, I have in the animals reducer. I will remove this console log here for a clean and nice console. So if I go back, I can do something componentDidMount. So as you can see, if you know English, this is after the render of the first component, but let's do so. For testing purposes, I will write something here like console. You can do it for your own. I would strongly encourage you to make your own experiences with it. And here is hello from DidMount, right? So let's check out what this brings us. Yeah, and let's check the order. So as you see here, this is the render cycle. And this is how, this is the timing of the render. This is at which time something is executed. Before the render function is called, so before anything here is on the screen, before any markup is built, we have something from hello will mount. So anything that we would like to do before the components mount, for let's say we would like to do action with data. Yeah, this is pseudo syntax, but let's say this would be a very good place for it. So if the component initializes itself and the component needs data, this would be the best point to fetch the data. Here you could do something like a jQuery style. For example, you want to do something like a document query selector and you want to remove a class to make it shiny. So you can document query selector and then you can do the whole, for an example, on the element foo, I'm writing pseudo syntax and then remove class, I'm not quite sure, and then remove class shiny or something like this. This would be the perfect spot because in this thing here, you know, you would you fulfilled the render, so everything was rendered. You could have a CSS class here that brings you a shiny or a blinking or whatever your UX designer or your designer has created for a fancy effect, and you supply it via a class name here that you resolve in your styles. And yeah, but after the effect is done, you want to remove the effect from the component to prevent it to happen again. So you are saying on componentDidMount, you could do the unmount. But let's head back into to our diagram because we have not covered anything. So as you see here, we have spoken about componentWillUnmount. Then the render cycle follows. After this, we have the componentDidMount. So what means before the render, the actual render, the componentDidMount. As you can see here, is a neuralgic point. We can also ask for componentWillUnmount. This will be a very good if you want to unsubscribe WebSockets, for example, here, or you have event listeners subscribe to anything, it would be very good to remove them here in the componentWillUnmount. Then we have a little bit more complicated lifecycle methods, or not more lifecycle method, but it is a lifecycle method. They return true and false. So here we can would have something like component will receive props. This is comes quite handy if you want to compare. You have the next props inside it, and you would be able to compare this props to the next props, and if they are different, do something, you know. You have the component should update, so you have the next props and the next state. You have component will update and so on. But I think these are the more complicated ones that come later. You can see here when they are executed before or after the render cycle. So component will receive props, holds here, compares the props and renders then, while componentDidUpdate is a possibility to compare the previous props with this props. Yeah, I just wanted to let you know them. For our application, it will totally fine to work here with this componentWillUnmount and componentDidMount lifecycle methods. Yeah, and in the next section, I want to implement it, and maybe we would be, maybe we would be able to also render it. I will stop the recording now to avoid the saving trouble, and see you right. I will be